Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Jason High here on a Saturday morning, March 23rd. I just want to react. March 23rd, right? Yes, March 23rd. Okay, great. I just want to react to the Kansas City Chiefs and a couple of the moves that they've made over the last week or so. It's been a little while since I talked to you guys. The most recent one, though, that I felt like I obviously need to talk about was last night. Adam Schefter broke the news that the Chiefs were trading star cornerback L'jarius Sneed to the Tennessee Titans for a 2025 third round draft pick. And then they also swapped seventh round draft picks this year. So, yeah, there had been a lot of smoke around what the Chiefs were going to do with L'jarius Sneed for the last few weeks now. I talked about that at the onset of free agency. But a couple of dominoes have happened since then that I kind of want to talk about and I think are kind of interesting before we get to the Sneed trade itself. So the Chiefs obviously re-signed Chris Jones. That was the last video I had talked about. Big deal. Huge deal. And, he had kind of a low cap hit for 2024. So it's like, okay, you got Chris Jones back in fold. That's great. That was your number one priority. He was the number one overall free agent from any team. So pretty big splash. It just didn't feel as much like it, because he was on your team last year. And then few other ancillary moves happened. Nick Allegretti left and went and signed a deal with Washington. Great for him. He was a Chiefs backup offensive lineman the last few years. He came in when he needed to. He played in the Super Bowl. Because Joe Tooney missed the game. I believe, he played the entire game with a torn elbow ligament, so that was really impressive. They also lost. They lost Jody Fortson. They lost Willie Gay on a one-year contract. He went to New Orleans. And then they re-signed Drew Tranquill. That was a nice move. I think a lot of people were happy with that one. The other significant free agents for the Chiefs, Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Mike Dana, as of this morning, as of this video, are still free agents, so they have not signed with any other teams yet. They also lost Mike Edwards the other day. The backup safety went to the Buffalo Bills. Mike Edwards had an interception in the playoffs, and he was a pretty good player. He won a Super Bowl with Tampa Bay against the Chiefs back in 2020, and then he won a Super Bowl this year for the Chiefs. Best of luck. Mike Edwards came to Kansas City on a one-year deal. Got some playing time whenever Brian Cook got injured. So, you really are excited to see these players come to Kansas City almost as these kind of hired gun type figures. They come here, they win a Super Bowl, and then they go get more money somewhere else. I love seeing that. I think that's great. And then the biggest move that they've made out of all of those was they signed Marquise Hollywood Brown from the Arizona Cardinals on a one-year deal, $7 million guaranteed. I think it was like an $8 million cap hit. And then I think he can get up to $11 million in incentives. So a lot of people, I love that move. Marquise Brown, okay, great. He's not huge. He's not a really big receiver, but he's very fast. He's very sure-handed. A lot of people kind of look at him as he's kind of an upgrade from McCole Hardman or an upgrade from MVS. So, that's a nice move. That's good. You think with him and Rice and then Kelsey and then a draft pick, okay, yeah, I think that's a receiving core we can win with. Okay, sounds great. Donovan Smith is still a free agent too, by the way. I missed him. Yeah, he is not signed with anybody yet. So the Chiefs starting left tackle from last year also is still a free agent. We'll get to that in a minute because I think that's also interesting and that could be something coming next with this cap space. So the Chiefs franchise tagged L'jarius Sneed. They did so, I believe, with the intention of trading him all along. I don't think that the Chiefs were probably going to keep L'jarius Sneed because I think that the Chiefs typically, when they keep a star player like that, they don't like to do it the way they had to do it with Chris Jones last year. Last year of a contract, high cap hit. They typically don't like doing that. What the Chiefs like to do, on the flip side, is they like to do the deal that they just did with Chris Jones today, or this offseason, is you sign Chris Jones to a 5-year contract in part because you can spread the money out. You can spread the cap hit out. The money isn't going to all hit on 1 year. And so for those of you that don't know, the NFL has something called the franchise tag. You can only use it on one player each offseason. It can be any player unless that player has a contract stipulation like Tom Brady did a few years ago where you can't franchise tag him, but those are extremely rare. So you can franchise tag a player. You designate him as your franchise player, which essentially means you have to pay him the top 5 salary in the average of the top 5 salary at his position for that upcoming season. So for L'jarius Sneed, that would be a cornerback, obviously, position, and they'd have to pay him $19.8 million, fully guaranteed, and all of that money hits your cap right then, right there. So it's not ideal for a team to have a player on the franchise tag, but what it does do is it gives the team more power to decide what they want to do with that player. So, for instance, the Washington, at the time they were the Redskins, now Commanders, they franchise tagged Kirk Cousins, the quarterback, way back in, I think it was 2015, 16, and 17, for 3 years in a row, and they had to pay him those fully guaranteed one-year contracts in which Kirk Cousins was getting paid like a top 5 quarterback. And so that's the most extreme example of the usage of the franchise tag. That was essentially the Washington Redskins liking Kirk Cousins but not liking him enough to sign him to a deal. They would not do that over again. It really was a mistake because they ended up paying him a lot of money for 3 years anyways, whereas if they had just signed him to a long-term contract, they would have been able to not get locked in, they would have gotten locked in. That's something. I'm a bit of a financial nerd too, that as most of you know, that a lot of times when you have an interest rate or a car payment or a house payment built in for the long haul, that's actually a good thing. Because if you are paying $1,000 a month, let's say, to a mortgage, locked in over the next 10 years, not including taxes and insurance, let's just talk about the actual payments themselves right now, $1,000 a month in 2024 is not going to be equal to $1,000 a month in 2034, right? So it's better typically to get these players locked in on these longer-term deals because of cost certainty, cost control, the market, inflation, the egg prices at Hy-Vee, they all go up. Your salary for that player stays right at that agreed-upon figure, which is also why the Kansas City Chiefs keep renegotiating Patrick Mahomes' contract every 3 years. Anyways, so that's why the Chiefs traded Sneed this morning. So if you're asking yourself, why did the Chiefs trade Sneed? A great player, and he was one of the best corners last year. He didn't technically make the All-Pro team. Trent McDuffie did, but Sneed, all of his grades, all of his stats against him, the yards per attempt against, I think I read that he was second best in yards per attempt of passes thrown against him last year. That is outstanding. He was amazing in the playoffs. He forced that fumble, if all of you remember, against the Ravens going into the goal line against Zay Flowers. He forced that fumble, which really flipped that game and really won them a AFC championship. So, L'jarius Sneed, awesome player. Great player. I think this year was definitely his best year by far. If there was a knock I'd maybe give on him, I would say, well, he hasn't really been an elite level corner for the last 2 to 3 years. But this year, there's no question he absolutely was. So, as it often comes down to, in a salary capped league like the NFL, why did the Chiefs trade L'jarius Sneed? They did it because of the money. You can't pay $19.8 million guaranteed, all hitting your cap at one time. The Chiefs generally don't like to do that. Now, the interesting thing about the Chiefs trading Sneed when they did, and this is what I think kind of poured in, is that there's some other moves coming, that the Chiefs actually restructured Patrick Mahomes' contract a couple weeks ago as well to open up more cap space. Some people thought at the time of them doing that, they were doing that so they could keep L'jarius Sneed. I even wasn't sure that might be what they were doing because I thought it was interesting that they did that at the timing of it. But I kind of always thought it made sense to trade Sneed. As great of a player as he is in a salary-capped league, when you're paying Patrick Mahomes $50-something million a year, happily, mind you, paying him $50 million a year. Now you're paying Chris Jones $30 million a year. You're not going to be able to keep everybody. So I think what the Chiefs are doing is smart. I think that it's smart to get out ahead of it and to go ahead and trade him for draft capital now. And I want to talk for a second about the compensation. So it was a third-round pick in the draft. So the draft has 7 rounds. Just for those of you who don't know, the NFL draft has 7 rounds. It is in reverse order of your record. So in other words, the Chiefs had the best record in the NFL this past year because they won the Super Bowl. So that's why they're picking 32nd. They are picking last. So it's based on how well you did. So the Chicago Bears are picking number 1 because they had the Carolina Panthers pick and they had the worst record in the league. So the Titans have the 7th pick in the first round, and then so on and so forth. So then they have the 39th pick in the second round. They don't have a third-round pick in this year's draft. The Titans do not. That's why it's a 2025 pick. A lot of people were wondering, why is it a 2025 pick? It's better to have the draft picks now, which I generally agree it is. It's better to have them now, especially when you're trying to go for a three-peat, which the Chiefs are. But you found a trade partner. You found a team that was willing to give Sneed that kind of contract, that was willing to trade for him, that wanted him. Maybe you were okay with sending him there. The Chiefs do not play the Tennessee Titans in 2024 unless they were to play them in the playoffs. And so that's why it was a 2025 pick, was because the Titans actually do not have a third-round pick in this year's draft. So they also traded 7th-round picks. They swapped them. All that does is it moves the Chiefs up about 25 spots in the 7th round. Generally those picks are not considered valuable. That being said, a couple of 7th-round picks that the Chiefs have turned into starting caliber players in the last few years have been Nick Allegretti, Isaiah Pacheco, and I believe Jalen Watson, I believe, was a 7th-round pick. So the Chiefs have found value there generally in the 7th round, which is good. So you get to move up a little better there. You don't have Mr. Irrelevant. You don't have the last pick anymore, I don't believe, in the 7th round. So that helps a little bit. I think that kind of helps offset a little bit the fact that you have to wait until 2025 to actually see any of the draft picks from the Sneed trade. But the big thing that the Chiefs are going to see this year, and the reason they did it, was the cap space they cleared up. The Chiefs now have over $25 million in cap space. Now, we're past the first wave of free agency and the second wave of free agency. So we're into the point now where there really aren't a lot of star players left on the board. Donovan Smith is still out there. He was your starting left tackle last year. David Bakhtiari is still out there, although he's been injured and he was released by the Packers. He's 32 years old. Same age as Smith. I'd be more interested in Smith because at least he stays healthier than Bakhtiari. There's a couple of running backs out there still, I believe, although not the top tier ones. They've all signed, the Saquon Barkleys and stuff like that. So there really aren't a ton of impact free agents out there. So that's why I do think it's really interesting that the Chiefs are opening up this cap space like they are. Could a trade be coming? Maybe. There could be a player out there the Chiefs are getting ready to trade for. The Chiefs are known for trading draft picks, leading up to the draft for established players with high cap hits. The Chiefs did it for Frank Clark back in 2019. They traded him a couple weeks before the draft. They traded for him, gave him a big contract right afterwards. And they also did the same thing with Orlando Brown from the Baltimore Ravens. They did it just a few days before the draft. They traded their first-round pick. I think something like that's coming. I don't know who it's going to be for. These trades the way they kind of work, unless you're really covering all the league very closely, the way they typically work is that before you have no idea, but then after you're like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, what? Yeah, the Chiefs should trade for Orlando Brown. Yeah, he was in a contract dispute. Okay, yeah. Oh yeah, he wants to play left tackle. Yeah, we need a left tackle. Oh, okay, yeah, we'll trade for Frank Clark. Yeah, the Seahawks don't want to give him the money. Yeah, okay, we'll trade D Ford. They were on the other end. They actually traded away D Ford. So I think a trade like that's probably coming. If I had to guess, I would go left tackle. I do think Wanya Morris is a guy that they believe in, but I also think that second year, 3rd round pick, only played 4 games last year, looked okay in those 4 games, which is actually a big positive for a rookie 3rd round pick like that. You're happy to see that, but I don't know that the Chiefs are willing to go into the season with him as their starter without adding at least some depth there. And I think Donovan Smith could be a guy they go get. They also could trade for a wide receiver. And they still have the NFL draft coming up. So they still have plenty of time to restock this roster. I think they've improved their offense with the Hollywood Brown signing. But I think that the trade of L'jarius Sneed is interesting in the timing. But I think that's why they got what they got for him. So those of you that think they didn't get enough, I'm just telling you that's why they got what they got. No one was offering a second-round pick. The Titans were not going to offer their second-round pick this year to get L'jarius Sneed because they didn't have a third-round pick. So they don't want to go the second and third rounds with no picks. A team that has a young quarterback doesn't want to do that. And that may have been they may have been the only suitors. There may have been a couple other teams that checked in. I had heard reports that there were 7 teams. But at the end of the day, you're going to get what the market says you're going to get for a player. You're going to pay what the market says you're going to pay for a house, for a car, for a guitar, for anything. And so that's why the Chiefs ended up trading him for what they got. And I think that's why they did it, was to clear up the cap space. And now that gives them a ton of options. If they want to pursue a trade for a player out there, maybe a DeAndre Hopkins, that'd be kind of strange because the Titans, I think, are trying to win. But, you never know. Chiefs might go out there and get somebody you'd be surprised about in the next few weeks leading up to the NFL draft. So that's it for me, everybody. You all have a great weekend, and thanks a lot.